your show whenever you want to begin.
Okay. You give me just a couple of minutes and we'll begin. Ready. So, are you ready?
Yep.
Excellent. So, hi. Welcome to the PostgreSQL user group meeting of July. Hope we have many more meetups through the rest of the year.
The traffic was really, really bad when I was coming south and north. It was jam-packed, everybody going north.
Yeah, I imagine. I offered Joe the presentation about Quickbread, which is a program that I'm writing, and I was expecting to have Quickbread in much better shape for today. However, that's not the case because of many different reasons. So I'm going to present about both Pgnui and Quickbread. Both do the same thing, so I'm not going to deviate much from what I wanted to present in the first place. The programs both attempt to be a generic. Let's see if this thing works. Yes, it does. A generic web user interface for PostgreSQL databases. It's a bit crazy to think that a single program can be a one-size-fits-all solution for any PostgreSQL database. but I'm still going for it. I'm still attempting it. Yeah.
Octavio, I know about pgadmin. Is this the same kind of tool?
No, pgadmin is an administration interface. These two are going to be the user interface. So, for example, in the picture, you see data management.
So
You cannot create.
Kind of like a framework to build the user interface.
No, it's not a framework, because with a framework you write code. You use a framework to write code. In this case, you don't write any code. You just create your table, hit refresh, and you have an interface. The craziest.
Or you can think like as on the access what Microsoft has done, you can just have a table behind the scene in your fonts or whatever. It's better than that.
Maybe. However, well, accessing includes backend, includes everything. So this is just going to be a user interface. It's in very, very, very early stage of development. There is no commercial interest behind it so far. It's for my own purposes. So it works for me. It's not intuitive yet. It's not beautiful, and I wish for it to be the best, but it's not. So let's see what can we do in the future with the program. That's a question that many people has asked me. Is it an administration interface like pgadmin or PHP PG? No, PHP pgadmin, PHP pgadmin or pgadmin 3, or is it more like Access or Django admin, for example? PHP pgadmin is an administration interface, and this is not the case. Now, there are many reasons of why I'm trying to attempt to do this. The number one reason is because I'm lazy. But ironically, it makes me do even more programming than I would. Yeah? Okay. Let's see of the following motivation aspects. Which one do you identify with? I think that even simple applications require development time. If I want to do a to-do list, I need to use a framework, I need to do code, and maybe, when you want to develop an application, what's the first thing after you analyze a problem, of course, and you come up with a solution? What's the first aspect of the solution you come up with? In my case, it's a database. It's how I'm going to store the data. Once I have the database, everything else, code, frameworks, seem like, to me, they are a hassle. They are something that shouldn't be done because I'm lazy. That's the point. I feel that all tables have the same operations, the same basic operations for every table. Insert, select, update, and delete. That's why SQL has these four, because everybody has to do this, to create, read, update, and delete records from a table. It can be in very different ways. It can be in a beautiful way, in an ugly way, in a generic way, whatever. But the same basic operations are for every table in the database. Now, you write your code, you use your framework, maybe you use Ruby on Rails and you do some scaffolding, or maybe you use some code generator and you have your template for where you can add some code. And then you realize, maybe because of a mistake, or maybe because the application evolved, that you need to change a column in the table, or you need to refactor your database layout. And this means that you need to update your application. You need to make changes all over the code. Because if you want to still to keep using a framework, and you regenerate your code, you need to still that code maybe that code may be overwritten with a new code and you need to port it back or something. And finally, and that's what I think is the most important one, is that currently frameworks don't take full advantage of that database system. And worst of all, they won't let you. So sometimes, what if you want to do a particular subquery or use a CTE or something, and the framework doesn't know, because frameworks want to be able to switch from DBMS to DBMS. They have to use some kind of common denominator between all of them. For example, here in this point, one of my pet peeves is that the application connects to the database using an admin account, not specific accounts for every user. If you want to do that, you may need to not use a framework, because most frameworks don't work that way. And with these programs, I'm going to do the things the other way around. I'm going to design the database, and I'm going to write a generic user interface. You don't have to code absolutely anything. You should not need to code absolutely anything. Although, of course, you will need some customizations, but for quick applications, for demo applications, for testing your database layout, you don't need to develop anything. This is how they work. Both Pgnui and Quickbread do the same thing. Pgnui was the first iteration, the first attempt. And Quickbread is a rewrite of Pgnui. So they do the same thing. This Pgnui query for the database layout using the information schema. Do you know the information schema from PostgreSQL? Do you know information schema? No? Information schema is a schema, but in the DBMS way, it's a schema that has some views to expose a database layout in tables. So that's where I'm taking information from. Or not quite, because sometimes I need to do some more complex queries that information schema doesn't expose directly, so I need to mix and do some left joins between PG catalog and information schema, and I use some helper views to do that. Some of the schema querying goes through through those views, and some of the schema querying goes directly to the database to information schema. And then for data manipulation, I use select, insert, create, and update directly to the database. In Quickbread, after some development of Pgnui, I found out that it was very difficult to keep this model. So I'm preparing an API. I am not allowing Quickbread to query directly information schema anymore. I am creating some views here, but those are based directly on PG catalog. It's faster. And the SQL API hopefully will allow anybody, if they want to create maybe a GTK version of Quickbread, or a Qt version of Quickbread, or a JavaScript version, I don't know, anything. They can take advantage of the API that it's already prepared. Maybe somebody wants to use the same API with a different database backend. I don't mind. But if this is in alpha stage, this is even worse. So, but hopefully it's getting better. In fact, performance is a little bit faster with this one. I'm going to show you Pgnui and a bit of Quickbread to show you what it cannot do mostly. Now, if there is one slide there is important, is this one, the USQL to UI mapping. There's a lot of information about the UI that can be taken from the database schema. For example, a simple one. If you have a not null column that doesn't have a default value, you can convert it into a required attribute in the UI. And you can do, would you like to do data validation? Doesn't matter. Because data validation will be done by the database, not by the framework. Postgres should reject everything. If you have, for example, a data type in a database, it can be mapped to an HTML input type date. And most browsers support that nowadays, with HTML5. The required attribute also. If they bypass this, the database will reject it. I don't mind about that right now. Now, identifiers are done like this. For example, things underscores do translates to things to do. Underscores are replaced with spaces, and the first letter is capitalized. However, you want to do something like this, like back to internet with a capital I, you can just use quoting, which is natural to Postgres, and it will convert to this. It won't mind for that. Second to last, from the second letter on, it won't try to upper or lowercase anything. The database name maps to the application title. Most other data type map to text box. Byte A and XML automatically map to file. I will try to do a demo of that. Let's see if it works. This is part of the most recent code, so that's why I checked the works for me row in the title slide. For example, you have foreign keys. You can use drop downs. SQL comments directly map to tooltips. If you have views, they can be used as filters if they reference a single table. If there are other kinds of views, they can be used as reports, which are not yet implemented. But let's think of what can we extract from the database and map to a UI. For example, privileges map to functionality. If you want a user not to be able to delete a record, you just revoke the delete privilege. And then the user won't see the delete column of the delete link for each record. And functions, for example, stable functions map to calculated fields, and volatile functions map to actions. This is yet not implemented. Any questions with this slide? Of course, the database will require some conventions to make it easier or to make it work. For example, tables should be named in plural. All tables require a primary key for now. I expect to remove this limitation because if I want to identify a row, I need to use some fields to match the row against in order to know what I'm going to update or to delete or to view. Now, this one may be ugly. Try to avoid surrogate primary keys for now because I don't have any row purification algorithm. And you will see why in the demonstration. Logic, rules, and other automation go in the database. If you want to, for example, whenever a record is added to a particular table, if you want to have another record inserted in another table, use a trigger. That's what they are for. You can create
still do programming, just like putting triggers instead of your code.
Exactly. And you can use any language. Postgres support a variety of languages. SQL, PL SQL, PGPL SQL, should I say, Python, C, and I know there are many plugins like JavaScript, I think, V8, and many more. I have done this with, for example, for an invoice, we use invoices in XML. And whenever I upload an invoice, I set required fields to 0 to whatever value. But from the XML, some fields are extracted and automatically filled into the row. This is done by the trigger. I don't have to program a UI for that. I have to program the logic, but not a UI. And visual customization, for example, if you want to have a column, a particular column red, You just modify the CSS file for the system. I'm trying to expose many IDs and classes inside that generic code in order for it to be customizable. Now, this is another important one, because the user will connect to the web interface, but the web interface doesn't know and doesn't care about users. It just requests things to the database. So you need to set up your roles, users and groups, in the database. You're going to use PostgreSQL to its full potential. This means that you are never going to have an admin password written in disk, as is the current state of affairs with most frameworks and most systems. Then you need to have an admin, a password for that admin, and it's written in a file, which is usually in the same directory where the rest of the application, of the web application resides, which is dangerous. I think it's dangerous. So we're going to assume the database is accessible to the network. You need to make sure that if a particular user cannot do that, you need to make sure your privileges are correctly set up. They will automatically map to the exposability, to the exposure of the functionality. Of course, we need to secure our communication. The web program, Pgnui and Quickbread, should be served over HTTPS or VPN, because if I'm going to log in, the password is going to be transferred in plain text. So because you are trying not to use JavaScript, you should use an HTTPS server or over VPN if you are in a secure environment, for example. And the database, of course, if you're going to have the web server and the database in different servers, they should be connected through SSL or VPN or whatever secure solution you are using. This I went through already. By setting up roles accordingly, most types of SQL injections will go away. Most. I'm not saying that all. But with current frameworks, if the framework has a bug or there is a programming mistake on the developer, because we are connecting using the admin account, the database cannot protect us. If I trick the framework to do something nasty with their data, it will just forward the requirement or the request to the database, and the database will do it. Here we already have our users and groups set up accordingly. And this means that if a user manages to manipulate the data is because he already had access to do that. Also, the data types should be set up accordingly. What if a user uploads an executable in a field that is supposed to be a picture? And that's one of the areas where we can improve in PostgreSQL, because there are maybe it could have some more semantic types, like email instead of text box. Like we have already CIDR. Instead of storing internet addresses in a character varying field, we use a CIDR field, and we already have operators. Maybe we can do something about the same line with byte A fields. Maybe add a MIME type, for example, to a byte A plus some MIME type field to create a file field. I don't know, something like that, or a picture field that restricts the data to some particular MIME type. The same goes for email. We could map an email data type directly to an HTML input type of email too, an HTML5. Now the differences between the two. Well, this I already mentioned. I'm presenting this as a proof of concept. Quickbread is not even that level. Pgnui does some requests. It repeats some requests to the database to get the data schema each time the user hits a 5 or clicks into a table. It tries to connect again. It tries to get the database name again. It tries to get the table layout again, the columns, the privileges. And Quickbread does this a little bit better in less round trips, so performance is a little bit better. Also, the code is, because this is PHP spaghetti code, and but it was brute force, because I had to change my mindset when I was programming this. I was so used to creating a UI for a particular data layout, and now I have to develop for a generic layout, for any layout. And that change, I had some problems with that, so the code in Pgnui is pretty much brute force. And in Quickbread, it's also PHP spaghetti code, but it sucks less, I think. Now, the source of information for schema definitions, it's information schema for Pgnui with some helper views. And in Quickbread, there are abstractions, the SQL API I mentioned earlier.
So, may I ask, who is doing this PG and UI? Who is doing that?
Me.
No, but I thought you did Quickbread.
Both. Quickbread is a rewrite of Pgnui. This is the first attempt, and this is the first rewrite. Yeah, because this one the code is horrible. So I decided to do it all over again.
Now, how many tables do you have in some of your databases?
Few, very few. Yeah.
I don't, I won't hurt your feelings, but this might be only good maybe to prototype a product,
Exactly.
maybe, but to make a true product with it, no way.
Exactly. You're right.
I have over 700 tables and fully normalized catalog.
Yeah, it will depend on what you want to do. But for example, in my case, I want to create an inventory for the. I want to use a database to store IP addresses, and I have to develop a UI for that. And I don't want to develop a UI for that. I want everything to be done automatically because I don't need a UI.
So are you an employee or a consultant?
I'm an employee.
That's fine. If you're a consultant, you'll be able to.
Yeah, of course. However,
the more hours you do, the better you are.
However, what if you have a database? You have your developer, for example, your developer wrote some code for you, and your application is already done, and maybe you want to insert 1,000 records in a table, and the developer just didn't figure out that you would need that. Instead, with this solution, in my personal case, I will have bulk insertion available for every table, just by creating a table.
When I started to be a programmer, at that time I was still writing on a piece of paper 30 years ago. My holy grail was to make a framework system, kind of like in your idea that I would lay down the tables, and at that time, event-driven programming was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, it was just one menu, one task, there was no multi-threading, it was that all. And my goal was to be able to act like you, kind of like you. I make my database structure. It should almost be the same thing, you add, delete, change, and so on. And I made a whole tool in concept that I was already programming for a couple of years on that thing. And I realized that when you look at the data, it's not just how the data is stored as an issue. It's also in which sequence the information is added.
Yes.
Because sometimes you have links that are there that might be optional. Sometimes they have to be there because you need to link a certain way before you can make something else. So that idea of sequencing, of prioritizing, of optional, non-optional, makes that, especially once you go above 10, 20 tables, the rules become so complicated that trying to make your app database driven becomes almost impossible because you don't have that, how would I say, you have a custom fill in the tables, and then make all of the logic of all the screens what it's supposed to do. And when the product is going on, I actually color code my flowchart about things in development, different shades of green. When it's fully working, it's black. And then guess what? Very often, oh, we need to get rid of this thing. So you get orange and then red. So your flowchart becomes a living document. And again, this shows the problem is that if you just do a program based upon the data structure, how will you be able to say, oh, I'm intending to add something or I'm intending to get rid of something? So version control of the data structure is also a major landmine, whatever they call it.
Well, I would have to say, like, so there's actually a lot of projects like this for my city. There was what's it called, database-generator.com. There was ajaxspread.com. There's tons of projects like this, and they exist because they do actually fill a gap that does need though. Is it the end-all be-all solution? Absolutely not. Any well-developed application is going to add tons of complexity over time when you run into these kind of edge cases. But having something like this existing for a PostgreSQL database would be great for those rapid-file prototypes that you want to get the idea out the door to show something what it could be, and then potentially build the actual real application on top of that.
As long as you can convince the customer or your boss that I can do the 80% in 10% of the time, but the last 20% is going to take 90% of your money.
Well,
that's the problem.
yes.
That most of the people who are the buyers, the clients, they don't get it. That cutting the tall grass is easy, but making it really work, that's where the expense is.
I mean,
Yeah, but
to tell the truth, most of the people who are looking to buy something, they want something cheap, and they don't need bells and whistles. What they want is something that works. And most of the time, a simple CRUD system works.
well, in fact, I had a slide disabled. I'm going to enable it now. I'm going to hide it, and I'm going to go through it because it's not a universal solution. This is not a universal solution. For example, you have a restaurant and you want to have some touch typing buttons to get numbers and orders. That's not going to be done by a generic database. But you hire if you hire a developer to do that interface for you, you have to do that tag. You hire him for that particular part of the database, but everything else can be done automatically. For example, for the manager maybe, for the system administration maybe. I don't know. In my case, I've seen that I have been in the need to refactor my database layout many times, and I haven't been able to. I haven't been in the need to rewrite code to follow or to update my UI after refactoring my database layout. If my database layout eventually goes into a very complex mesh of relations, then I may be in the need of hiring someone to do the UI for me. But then, by then, the database will have already iterated and evolved into something that I know it will work, not just something that the developer thinks it will work.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
prototyping is the right word, actually. And that's why it's quick. It's not the best. It's quick. Let's see how it happens, because precisely the next section of this talk
It's a big project you're trying to do.
is a demo. Huh?
It's a big project you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to create a small system for a library. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but it should work. It should work to demonstrate the concepts behind all this. So, where's my mouse? I'm going to create a small application. It's supposed to be for a library. Okay, here we are. we don't have a library database. I'm going to create a database. No, I'm going to create a database called library. Okay, and then we're going to connect to it. Oh, I am ready in PostgreSQL. Yeah, I'm going to connect to it. Sure. Now let's have a table. I already have my recipes here. Maybe the books have an inventory code, because if I try to, we need to set up our primary keys right. That's the most important thing. If the books may have the same title, may have the same cover, may have the same author, but they may be two physical copies of the same title. So what are we going to do as of right now is to use an inventory code as a primary key. You can see that this table is not normalized by titles. We're repeating information. However, there are many cases where you have a book of the same title, but it has different cover, or it's different edition, even if it's everything else is the same. So this may be, for a small library, this may be a good setup. I'm going to create a table, and I'm going to connect using my own to the library catalog, and it doesn't work because before we do anything, we need to import the views, the helper views. So we're going to do this. I'm going to take all files and I'm going to import it into the database. This is just some magic. This is for Pgnui, and the same goes for Quickbread. Okay. And I'm going to connect to library 2 and import this one. Okay. So if I do refresh, there we have an application title, and we have books, and I can start inserting books. So it's generic. Yeah, it works. Inventory code was our primary key, and we now have it as a required field. I'm not doing any JavaScript magic. I'm just setting the HTML5 required attribute. If I bypass this, the database will reject it. Not my framework, not my logic. The database itself, how it should be, I guess. I can just insert data here. I have some data in my recipes. Let's insert this book, PostgreSQL up and running, with inventory code 1. So inventory code 1, edition 2nd, Regina OOBE. What did I say? Second. Uh, 2014, and then we have an ISBN, and our landing time is 3 days. We have something. Now we want to have another record, which is for the same book, and the number is the inventory number is 2. I can just do sim for a similar one. I just modify inventory code. Then we'll have another book. You can see that ISBN underscore 13. I could capitalize this using quotes. I could if we check out the code, we can see the author has some class. And this could be used to modify the CSS file. So I can, for example, change the color, hide it, make it wider or shorter. Any questions so far? You can, for example, if you want to sort it by inventory code, you can do that. That's already done. Most of the tables require the same thing. You need to sort, you need to insert, you need to create, delete, you need to view. And in my case, I have done my own system, a couple of systems. One is an inventory. And another one is a to-do list, but I don't count that as a system as such. It's just one table. So. But for example, you have only one table. Maybe we could remove this altogether. This is not implemented, but you could just remove this. You can just do a single table system. Let's insert more values. Oh. Oh, I need to remove that 1 and 2 because I already inserted them. So I'm going to go the easy way. I'm going to truncate the books table, and I'm going to insert them. It's a cheat sheet. But if there we go. So we have some data. We can sort by name. We can sort by name and then by addition. We can do a multi-column sort, ascending and descending. This just maps. This sorting is not being done on the front end. It's being done on the back end. This is requested to Postgres. It's converted into order by clauses into the SQL query. Let's create another table. Maybe we have some users, and we're going to loan books to the user. Now, this is very ugly because the users were going to use a name and a date of birth as the primary key, because we could easily fall into users with the same name. And yeah, I granted that we can also fall with use with the same name and the same date of birth too. But maybe we can find some other way to identify users. Maybe they have a card, a library card, with a unique identifier per user. Or maybe we can use their social security number. But the problem with that is that I don't think everybody could have a social. Well, maybe they do. I don't know here in the United States how it is. But I think maybe we need some technique to do role prettification, to have a way to map a primary key, a system primary key, to a user-friendly identification system, and use that for the UI. That's not we don't have anything implemented, but that doesn't mean we cannot do it in the future. For now, we're going to do it like this. Here we have our table. And we're going to insert some users. We have users. Okay. Okay. I'm going to use the table interaction. That's what the name is. I'm going to later explain the log interaction. That's something different. It's incomplete, but it will also explain what I had in mind for the system. We have some users, we have a date of birth, we have an address, we can modify the record, we can view it, delete it, and duplicate it. We have some, maybe we want to loan books to the users. So we're going to have our primary key is going to be the loan date and the book. Maybe, I don't like this design, by the way. I don't think it's normalized enough. However, what I want to show you here is that we have a username, a user DOB, because we're using multiple column foreign keys. Because this table, the users table, has a multiple column primary key. It also means that the foreign key is going to be multiple column. Yeah.
When I started to create regular databases, I found out that one of the best way to always create their normalization is I create in every single table key, it's an integer, and then every table that links into it, I basically call like pointer or p underscore and name of the table that is linking to as my foreign key.
Yeah.
Just as an idea, I found that that technique basically means that the keys and the foreign keys are never seen by the end user. I never have to be worried about the end user saying that, well, no, my invoice number is longer or shorter or whatever.
Exactly.
So I know you may want to think about trying to avoid using visible fields or fields that be changed by the user as part of your keys and foreign keys.
One of the things that we can do, I hope to have implemented here, but it's not like this right now. That's why I'm doing it this way. But I'm thinking that we could do something like this. For example, create function, pretty users, returns maybe okay, and have select some particular beautiful way to show the record from users with a survey key. And if we can add a convention, the idea is to add a convention that if we have a triple underscore with a pretty function named this way, with a single argument from the table that we want to prettify, the records, we can just replace a foreign key with this. That's an idea that could be implemented in the future. I have it in my head. It's not implemented. But this could be a pretty easy way to prettify any record on any table, and the UI should just be able to pick it up.
Or, because the problem is that if you want to list 500 records and you want to display the pretty version of that text, you're basically going to trigger 500 SQL statements on that one record every time to prettify it.
No, because you can do this. For example, create function. Let's see if I can do it on the fly.
Otherwise, you could create a non-normalized field where you display a prettified version and use triggers.
It also use calculated columns, right?
Exactly. It's like a calculated column. Like for example, select name from users. I'm not sure if this is the way to go. Let's see if it works. Oh. I will attempt that after the. Oh, it worked. And so pretty is the name. Oh, because I should have maybe wait a minute. I have something here under my sleeve. Where it is? I think I don't have it here. I think I don't have it. This is the outdated version, I think. Anyway, I'm going to out that to you. I'm going to check that out. because there's a way you can call the calculating column with this syntax. I think is like this. Something like this. It's right off my mind at the moment. But you can do it in a single SQL statement. You can get all the whole list, the complete list as an extra column, just like this. But it of course, it will take the correct value. I just need to get my way around it. Anybody of you knows?
I don't remember how you know, but I've seen it before.
Yeah,
I know what you're
there's a
talking
way.
about.
Yeah, there's a way. And that's the thing where I see that we should take full advantage of PostgreSQL.
What I also really like about this is so most of my work I do with APIs. I don't actually worry about user interfaces. It's my primary job function.
Yeah.
And majority of API work is actually designing the current database.
Yeah, excuse me? With that,
Well, designing the current database schema.
yeah.
So this would actually be pretty useful for working with that, because when you are building an API, the majority of your work is in the database and actually in creating the triggers and the functions and everything you want, because you want everything that interacts with that database to follow your logic and not necessarily the logic the developer decides to supplement.
Exactly. And done in the back end.
So it definitely is very useful, I think. And like I was saying, it doesn't fit every single use case ever.
That's
It's
correct.
not going to, but I think it definitely has a place in the role.
Let's add a loans table.
Yeah, I was hoping to see how you did
The foreign keys.
form keys.
So let's add this. We have loans, and let's insert the loan, and it can be converted automatically into drop-downs. I don't like this, by the way. I'm going to change this. This is difficult. This is going to be in Quickbread. I'm going to use these two are going to be joined into a single field, because the user doesn't need to care about if, for example, this one, he still has 3 options. This is not right.
Because you're using a compound key.
Exactly. He should see just a single column drop-down. I mean a multiple column drop-down in a single field. This needs to be fixed, but this works so far. I'm going to lend book 1 today. This is, you see that the loan date, even though it's part of the primary key, it's not required because it has a default attribute, which is now. So I'm just going to submit it. Did it work? There it is. Oh, again, the table interaction. User DOB. The loan date is today because the default expression is now. Just as simple as that. It was not required. The database detected that the field is actually not required because it has a default value.
It's an application that actually uses the database.
Exactly. Now, the return date is not set. However, well, let's see if I have more entries in the loans table. No, I don't. Oh. Okay. There are a couple more things that I can show you. Let's say that we have roles. We're going to have a librarian and 4 assistants. The librarian is going to be named Splinter, and the 4 assistants are going to be Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. Okay? We're going to create these roles. These are the passwords. They have login privilege and in their corresponding role. Oh, I think I already created them. Doesn't matter. One of the things that I cleared the database before presenting, but I didn't clear up the users. I just created a catalog. So they're already created. I'm going to grant them the appropriate privileges. And we're going to face some weird problems here. Before I go into the users, I'm going to create this function. If a book is available, okay?
I just want to say I'm enjoying this, but I got a call. I have to go.
Sure.
But I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll be back. Thanks.
Have a good one.
Cool.
So many people calling me.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
It's good beginning.
Thank you. So this is Quickbread. Quickbread looks a little bit different. And for the books, I have is available here. This is a calculated field. This is not taken from the table. This is the function that I just created. Quickbread recognizes this already, but you cannot manipulate data yet with Quickbread. But with Pgnui, you just see the books and it's not recognized yet. So Quickbread this is part of the difference, and that's what I'm working with. But how it can find out if a function is suitable for a calculated field, I'm currently taking stable functions that take only one parameter, which is the table. That is taken as a calculated field. Now, this doesn't mean it will fit everything, every case. We may use some hints table in the future where this that looks like a calculated field, don't take it as a calculated field. You just tool the Boolean and maybe it's hidden. Because if you have a field here, function that does something computationally heavy, maybe you don't want to display it for every single record because you are going to hog your database. So we are still going to hint the system with small things like this. Back to the users. Okay. So I'm going to log out. Just going to log in with a different user. Let's log in with as one of the assistants to the library database. And he can only see books. He cannot see users or loans. That's up to the librarian in this application. And that's defined right here. Grant all privileges on books, users, and loans to librarian, but only grant select on books to assistant. And just like that, we have functionality hidden from the user. Of course, the user can. That's why the security model is assume that the database is exposed to the user. If the user connects directly to the database, he still will not be able to use the users or the loan table.
Well, that's great because when a lot of things face is they lose functionality because they don't have that admin account that has every single privilege granted to it. Yeah. And so each framework when you're developing your application, you end up having to rebuild. I need the user system with an ACL list. I need this and that. And just by relying on the system that's already in place.
Yeah.
But the only thing I can see as an issue though is the IP address because it's actually the web application that's connected.
Excuse me.
Because it's the web application that's connected to the database, if you wouldn't be able to do IP address restrictions through it.
Do you mean by using the PGHGA file?
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't say I want this user from this IP address to connect because it's actually going to look like the.
I think you can. I think in PGHGA you can restrict by user.
But it would see the IP address of the web application.
Yes.
Yeah, so if that's what I'm saying. You can't say you have to allow it from the web application, which basically means it's allowed from anywhere that the web application itself is accessible.
Yeah, if you want to allow a user to connect, well, let's see what the syntax of a PGHBA. It's going to be here in PostgreSQL main pghba.conf. No, oh yeah, sudo make me a sandwich. Here we go. So user. I think this is user. No, this is user. User. This is user. To which database? By which user? From which address? Authenticated by which method? So you can do a lot of combinations, but of course, you may want to disallow a user to connect. You may do, for example, here you can add the address of the web server, and only list the users that will be allowed to connect to a particular database. Maybe you have two databases, and a particular database, PostgreSQL cluster, shares users between catalogs. So you may want to list some users to one catalog and some users to another catalog through this, or just through all. And it's going to be the same. And that's using the MD5 authentication, of course, with password instead of ident. So where were we? You will see that here, for example, here is not detecting that he's only granted select access. Here the four are fixed. There should be no icons here, or only the view one. But here in Pgnui, we only have the view column. The other ones were hidden. If the user bypasses this and maybe directly queries a URL, maybe he should still not be able to get access because the database will forbid him. Okay. We can create a function. This section, I'm going to just explain it because it's not implemented. But what if you want the user to have a loan action? So you have a book and you want to loan it, just like that. You don't want the user to insert a record. You want to loan a book, give it some semantic, something like the gentleman here said. You could and you should be able to create a function called loan. It should be volatile, not stable, because it will modify the database. It will take a book and a user, and it will insert a value. Quickbread and Pgnui should be able to detect this and add it to the action catalog for both books and users. And if you have here book, if you have here in the books table, of course, granted you have the appropriate privileges, then you may have here in this one, like click here, and maybe you have here a toolbar called loan. And because you have two parameters, books and users. And you are selecting a book, it will prompt you for which user. Everything of that can be taken from the database, and the UI can do it for you. There are so many possibilities here with Quickbread and Pgnui. So once you have these actions, you can create workflows by following some action and some other action, Another thing that I would like to implement here is, for example, loans references books. So why not have here a loan link, loans, see loans. Click in the loans and you will see the loans for that book automatically. Everything of that can be done. we would of course grant execute on the function to the librarian only, not to the assistants. This function would return a loaned book. This would mean that Quickbread and Pgnui should well, we are logged in as an assistant, so we're going to log out and log in back as a librarian. And in the loans table, we could have here something. Click here on the checkbox and click return, and just like that, the book is returned. By programming everything in the database and having the UI automatically detecting it. Let's add some comments. Pgnui doesn't recognize comments, but Quickbread does. Let's create a view called unavailable books. This is what I was looking for a while ago. So you can you have unavailable books. You can reference this from book, and the function is available. Here it is. Select from. This is a bit more complex. Where? Oh, I missed the where clause. Yeah, that's what happened. It's going to add that. And what I imagine here is doing this. From unavailable books. I'm going to reduce the font size so we can do it. We can see it in the same, in a single row, everything. And that can be a simple report. And it could be just exposed as a report in the database, in the UI. I imagine here having a report button is not implemented, of course, but we could click it here and see the list of views that are not actions, that are not, calculated fields, that are volatile maybe. I know, no, those are functions. Views that can be used as reports. That's what I meant. So there's a lot of work to do, but I think it can be worked out into a pretty cohesive UI, generic UI for databases. I have something else to show you. You can see here that it says view as log or as table. This there is one pattern that I'm using, one database design pattern, where if I want to keep track of every state of a particular object, I add the object, the ID or primary key or foreign key or whatever, and then a date or a timestamp or some time-related field as part of primary key with the identifier, and then the rest of the attributes. And the interface recognizes it as a log, because it won't always be the same. We could add a hint in a particular table that should be implemented in the future to say, do not treat this table as a log. But you won't have to program anything. Every possibility should be already there. Just to give a quick demo of this concept, I'm going to create a table. Let's create a table called log, which has a book, which is integer. I think the book, yeah, because it was an inventory code. And then date, yeah, date, and location maybe, I don't know. We're going to just invent something up, make something up. Okay, so we're going to be back To make it easier, I'm going to log out and log in as my user because of the privileges. So there we have a log. I'm going to use this as a log. I'm going to insert the data. I'm going to insert a record. And book number 1, which is today, location, maybe the book is here in the SD pub. If I see it as a log, then I see this. If I click on view history, oh, we only have one record. I'm going to add another record. Book 1, tomorrow. The book moved to Tijuana. Do not fail me. View history. You see, it only shows us the last state of the record. It's failing here. Something's wrong. I'm going to owe you that demonstration. I'm going to create a video with that. But what happens in my other computer is that you see a history of the records. You see the first one, it says SDPG, and then 1 day later it says the date, and 1 day later, and then you have from SDPG to Tijuana, and then you can update the data. And you do not need to type the book because it already knows which books we are talking about. And you can set the date and the new data, and it will just add it to the history. So that's a data design pattern that you will have available. You may use it if you want, and you may not if you don't want to. It's not mandatory. So let's go back to the presentation. Other design goals. The application should be completely server-side because I want to have URL to be copied and pasted in some other place for some other user and to see the exact same data. Most JavaScript applications break this paradigm. I want the back button not to be broken. Currently, you can easily do something like this. I'm working with this book. I'm going to modify this one and this one because we don't have checkboxes yet. And I can just modify here and modify here, and it works. Because I'm not using a client-side code. And in fact, client-side code is discouraged, but it's not rejected. Because there are some things that won't work without some JavaScript code. So we just need to be very careful not to fall into the traps of using client-side code. This is the slide that I have hidden. So it lets the database design evolve. This is some of the beneficial side effects of using this kind of generic UI. It lets the power users extend the applications. For example, I'm an employee at a company, and sometimes the system doesn't do what I want. I want to connect to the database. I can connect to the database, and I can create my own query, my own view, and get my own report. But because there's only one user called admin, I'm never going to get access to the database. And also, of course, the example I already gave that it will let developers focus only on the custom needs that are not generic, that are not the same problem for everybody else. That are not part of the prototype. Maybe by the time you hired your programmer, you will have a much better notion of what you want for your application. There are a lot of things that are still unimplemented. Pagination, if you have 1,000 records, it will fetch the 1,000 records. This is bad. If some primary key constraint or foreign key constraint is violated, it will be rejected because the database rejects it, but there's no error message yet. There's no handling. There's no internationalization.
Question.
Yeah. the local support is going to be managed by PostgreSQL. So in my case, all my databases are UTF-8. However, what if you have one user? That's the question is, what if one user speaks, for example, English, and a different user speaks Japanese, and there's only one name for a column, right? How can you differentiate one user from another one? So we may have to add extra tables, particular specific to Quickbread and Pgnui, in order to provide that support, because PostgreSQL doesn't provide it, and maybe PostgreSQL doesn't need to provide that. We can do that. We may add an internationalization table for identifiers for different languages, and hopefully it will magically work. There are rough ideas. I talked about bulk data management. I don't like it when I need to upload 10 records to a particular table and I have to do every one manually because the developer never thought that anybody would need that functionality. And bulk insertion and data set download is more common than we think. Notifications. What if we just have a notifications table, and by using some trigger, we add a message into a notifications table. We could have something like this, and here have a 1 or a 2 with a notification, and see what's in the notification table from some date to the current time. It's not. I don't think it's that hard to implement. A user directory. Well, that's another story. So possibly hard ideas, generic search. The hard part is to make it intuitive to a user, but keep it not CPU intensive, not abusable. Their design reports, I just have no idea how to approach that yet. I may come up with something. Well, there have been already many questions. If you have many more questions, please bring them on. I have a couple of more slides. They are hidden, which talk about which are called wish lists. For example, what would I want from PostgreSQL? I would like PostgreSQL to let me reorder columns in the table. Many people have asked for this. There are some details here with information schema. When tables only have a select privilege for a user, the user cannot see what are the primary keys for the table. So the user cannot use row identifiers. That it affects Pgnui, but it doesn't affect Quickbread because Quickbread takes the data from the PG catalog. We can work around that. Support for multiple queries per request to enhance performance and reduce round trips, network round trips. For example, this is one I would like to get the database definition, M time and connection. If I connect to that, if Quickbread and Pgnui doesn't need to query the database schema every time it connects, it will improve performance. I could catch the data layout in disk or whatever method or in whatever way, and instead of pulling the full data layout each time I connect. So if I connect to the database and the database responds, there, you have access, and here's the M time, I can immediately do a comparison and see if I can use the local cache, or I must requery the data for that table, the data layout for the table. Some field exceptions for select. This is just because debugging a table with byte A XML, it's painful. Do you know what I mean? You have byte A table and you do select a star from a table and you have this humongous multi-row record, so you cannot do that. And semantic data types, I already went through that. And HTML, I wish it had intertable alignment and multi-column dropdowns. We'll have to use JavaScript for that. The last piece of the demo, because it was not part of the library, but let's see if it works. Create table, files, I don't know. Name. Files. Insert. Let's see if it works. Name. Some file. File. Choose file. Automatically, because I used a byte data type. I'm going to take a Dropbox presentations, this one, and store the library SQL and submit it. And because I have data, it converts into a download link, and it just dumps me the data back. That's part of what can be automated by taking a look at the data types and mapping them to a UI. I use this for invoices now, and it works really well.
So every request that goes from our client to the web server, it reconnects to the database when it's anything.
Yeah, that's the case.
So if you can run a service,
Here you go.
if you have a service that is running in the backend, it talks to DB, and your DB receives through that service. You won't have to query your schema. And all of the logic can be made in the application.
Like, for example, using PGPool or something like that.
No, not each pool, but more of like it's a service. So run a daemon.
What, a service?
Yeah. So that service you started.
So like
Yeah,
you're
the one
talking
ending
about
cost
the SQL
of
API,
Yeah.
is that like a name major, right?
No.
Every
The SQL API, let me show you the SQL API.
part your interface, it goes to connect DB and get
Yeah.
The SQL
just like in a JBox.
Yeah.
Once you connect it, you can keep that connection persistent, like never changes.
that's an interesting thought. I'm going to give it a
You may also be able to use WebSockets.
yeah for interactive applications, of course. This is the API. So you just create a. There's a view called database. Oh, maybe I should just show it here. From QB1 database. You don't have to worry about converting the pretty name in your client side code, because it already gives it to you. Instead of tables, we call them entities. If we're talking about entities, I know we're talking about the API. And there you have a schema: public name books, identifier books, pretty name books, singular name. We don't have a way to store singular names yet. We may need to find a way around that. Description taken from the comment. Can select, can insert, everything. And the most recent interaction, which doesn't work yet, but you get the idea. And that's it.
Really cool.
So that's what it does.
I think that's a really cool project. I mean, I'd love to see where you take it, and I think it could be useful to a lot of people.
Quickbread, that's
Quickbread.
it.
Yeah, Quickbread.
Is the project also similar to
Uh,
Java project?
Yes.
Yes.
I
know
look.
what it does. I was looking at the net. It says quick project, the Java project is.
Really?
Yeah. Quickbread.
It's not online yet. I'm still in time to rename it.